Well, hello from the Aviva Stadium. Well, it was a record win for Ireland over Australia with a 46-19 victory. Mack Hansen scored a hat-trick of tries. Caelan Doris, Ryan Baird and Robbie Henshaw also scored. Rory O'Connor and Cian Tracey are here. Welcome, lads.
Hello, Sinead.
That was much better, wasn't it?
Yes.
A lot
better. Okay, a reminder, our rugby coverage in Indo Sport is sponsored by Energia. Energia is Rugby for All initiative, supports inclusion and welcomes people of all abilities. For more, go to energia.ie/rugby. Well, much better.
Yeah, the performance I think everyone has been looking for quite some time. I think you have to caveat it to a degree with how poor Australia were at the end of the second penultimate game of a very, very long season, a gruelling season, and they looked like a team on their last legs. They didn't look like the team that beat South Africa in Ellis Park or the team that ran the line so close in Australia. But that's not Ireland's problem. In Ireland, what we wanted to see was something more like what Ireland were at their best. And in terms of the way their attack shape looked, I thought they were crisp, top of the ground. And I think this team, with the changes that Andy Farrell made midweek, is starting to take on a little bit of a different look. And it's evolving in front of our eyes. And I think it's starting to take the shape that we might see it go in the next year or two. And that's not to say that, say, someone like Andrew Porter, who missed out today, isn't going to come back in, or players like Ringrose and Van der Fleer don't have a part to play, but there are other options there. And when you pick them, when they're in form, they will perform for you. And there's no greater example of that than Mack Hansen, who came into the team and scored a hat-trick. But it wasn't just a hat-trick. There was great substance to his performance. Yeah. So I think it's a very positive night. We know there's a bigger test coming on the horizon very, very quickly, but taking on its own merits, that is a really good day at the office. A team that's taken a lot of heat in certainly the last 2 weeks, but beyond that as well. And when they play well, I think we have to credit them for doing so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think in my mind it was arguably their best performance of the year. I think the only thing I was chatting to you about it during the game that you could probably compare it to is the opening game of the Six Nations here against England. I don't think they've played all that well across the course of the other games. I know the summer tour is obviously very different, so I think in that regard it's like hugely positive. Something I was writing about in my match report, that when this team was at their peak, not this team, because I know it has a couple of fresh
Andy Farrell's
faces.
team.
Yeah, Andy Farrell's team. When they were at their peak in 2022, like their calling card was starting fast and really like setting the tone from early on. And they haven't really been doing that over the last while. And they did that tonight. Now, I know like they went 14-0 up with Mack Hansen's 2 tries. And I think they'll be really frustrated that Australia pegged them back. And we're actually in the game for far longer, I think, than they should be. I know the scoreline kind of blew out at the end, but I thought it was more of a reflection of Ireland's dominance, really. I think sometimes at the end of games, when you get 2 late tries, it can kind of maybe not give a fair reflection. But I actually think that Ireland were just miles better than Australia. Like, I mean, you just look at the stark difference in the line out. I mean, for me, the improvements really all stemmed from there, that once you got the fast start, 100% off the line out. Now, I know there was one where it was scrappy enough, but it still went down as 100% success rate, which was the first time that they've done so since Italy in the Six Nations.
Well,
so
you really have done your homework, Cian.
Yes, well, I did a big piece on the line out lately. So the scrum was 100% as well. The scrum was outstanding. I thought Paddy McCarthy was brilliant. Tom Clarkson, when he came on, did really well as well. I know the ultimate test is next weekend, both in terms of the line out and the scrum. But I thought that laid the platform for Ireland to pick apart the Wallabies. I know it was kind of scratchy at times, but far, far better than anything we've seen over the last 2 weeks, certainly.
Yeah, and I think Andy Farrell mentioned it in the press conference just there afterwards as well. You know, the way that obviously Australia scored that try, Ireland, it felt like they should have had a greater lead at half-time. It was 19-12, but they had to kind of come again, didn't they? And they got those 3 tries at the end, and that Jefferson Gibson Park kick for the Robbie Henshaw try was
big moment.
Well, it was one of 45 kicks in the game. They kicked for 1,175 metres across the game, and the kicking was where they really won it, because Australia couldn't handle, whether it was the conditions or the accuracy of Ireland's kick, combined with the aggression and timing of the chase, was way better than it had been in Chicago, when they put up a couple of really good contestables but didn't quite get them back, or Japan when it didn't quite work. So I think between them, Prendergast and Gibson Park, their kicking was really exceptional tonight. And the chase, whether it was Hansen going up and winning the win for the 4th try, or the kind of the kicks in behind from Gibson Park, I think it was, that led to James
Tommy
Lowe
O'Brien.
pinning, was it
Tommy O'Brien, I think,
O'Brien, sorry, but
beautiful
pinning
rubber
Max
kick,
Jorgensen in behind the line in the build-up to the 3rd try. they kicked their way to this game. And that's like, you watch England against New Zealand earlier, it's the way the game is being played at the moment. And Ireland showed today that they can kind of thrive in that world and are getting more comfortable with doing so. And again, they're playing against the kind of masters of that game next weekend. But today, like, that's the Wallabies team full of kind of good aerial players. Like Max Jorgensen, I think he's a really class player. He wasn't tonight. He didn't play well.
Wasn't his best,
Potter
yeah.
struggled. Daugunu didn't really work as a selection. You know, they couldn't get Sualihi into the game. But Ireland ruled the skies today, whether it was out of touch or in the air when it came to the contestables, or even when they kind of went long. They waited for Australia to catch the ball, and then they went in and they completed really hard on the ground. They caused errors. You know, they forced knock-ons, and from those errors, they were far more ruthless than they have been in recent weeks. And yet, the last 20 minutes or the last 10 minutes, that was the reward they broke Australia, and they got the reward in the end. But they weren't as ruthless in previous games, so that's good as well that they finished strong.
It's a great point, and I totally agree, because it's something like we've seen signs that like Ireland are trying to move with, you know, the increased importance in the kicking game, and that was something that I was quite critical of last week, that they seemed almost caught between two stools, that they obviously don't want to throw away everything in terms of their really clever shapes and lines of running. But I thought the Mack Hansen, I think it was the second and third try off the top of my head, really summed up them kind of finding the balance right, because came from similar enough positions, but the second try came from Robbie Henshaw playing a lovely pass out the back. I think it was off a scrum, wasn't it? Played a lovely pass out the back for Sam Prendergast to put Mack Hansen under the post. Really well worked try. And then for the third try, it was a similar enough position, but Prendergast went for the crossfield kick for Tommy O'Brien, who did brilliantly, not only to catch the ball, but to place it perfectly for Mack Hansen. Now, the pillar defence was appalling from an Australian point of view. I'd say Mack Hansen couldn't believe his luck that a gap opened up. But I really liked the invention in the 22 there, that they're mixing it up and throwing different pictures. And that, to me, suggests that they are trying to get that balance within their game, and they got it right tonight.
Well, that connection between Prendergast and O'Brien, we saw it on the summer tour. But to be able to change it up, like, it looked like for a second like Prendergast didn't know what he was doing, but he actually got the kick away as Sualihi nailed him. Yeah. And the kick, it wasn't, I think, where he probably wanted to put it, but O'Brien improvised, and because Australia weren't expecting it, they weren't in position to deal with what Mack Hansen was about to do, and that's the unstructured stuff that Ireland haven't been good at. Usually it's Ireland who are uncomfortable in that sort of chaos. But they adapted to what they saw in front of them brilliantly, and it was a really good example of what they can do if they keep working towards it. So I think that's a really good example of Ireland thinking on their feet and showing a bit more confidence. I know Caelan Doris talked about the Ireland football win on Thursday night here, and you could say that that's lip service, but it actually does sound, from talking to a couple of players tonight, that they really got energy from it, and they wanted a bit of that action themselves. And I thought the crowd was good tonight. The atmosphere, the 8-10 kickoff,
really good. Yeah.
I think that they almost went, you know what, like they kind of all talked about getting out of their own way, enjoying themselves, embracing the privilege of playing here on a Saturday night in front of a big crowd at the Aviva. And it all fed into that positivity, bled into their performance. And I like, sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's not just the complicated stuff in the training field. Sometimes it's just feeling good about stuff and watching Troy Parrott stick the ball in the net twice and going, I want a bit of that.
Well, to Troy Parrott, we've got 3 from Mack Hansen. Sorry.
So I think we should credit the atmosphere, because we're quick enough to criticise it.
Sweet Caroline aside.
Not great. But I mean, before the game,
during a scrum, wasn't it? They kept on.
I just hate any music in breaks of play, which rugby just seems mad keen to do, as if follow the American sport model. Not a fan of that at all. But even the stadium DJ playing "Return of the Mac" just after the team had been announced on the loudspeaker was great. And I also thought, you can't obviously do it for a 12:40 kickoff against Japan, but I thought the entrance at Right Here, Right Now, and Sinead O'Connor, I thought that was absolutely brilliant. So they have made big strides to try and improve the atmosphere. And look, it helps when it's 8:10 at night, a big team in town. I would say the place will be rocking again next week, but it just gives everyone sort of a bit of a feel-good mood.
And it's symbiotic, because the performance buzzed, and the crowd buzzed off that
two early tries.
Yeah. You know, I think that got the crowd into the game, so it also helps with that as well. But it was a good night at the office, and that's important for this team, because they haven't had moments like that. I know there was that second half surge against England, but the Six Nations was like the last time they played here against a tier 1 opposition. They were blown away by France. So, like, Andy Farrell was asked 4 times in the embargo briefing last week about the team's confidence in different ways, whereas tonight he was able to kind of talk about the team's confidence in a positive way. And they need to to have moments like that as reference points as a team. Ryan Baird needs that. Sam Prendergast needs that. Tommy O'Brien needs that. Jack Crowley needs that. They all need those moments, because that's what you go back to a week later when you're playing against the world champions.
And no one did that more really than Mack Hansen tonight. What about him? We spoke about him yesterday, Cian, and what would he deliver? But like, considering his lack of game time, his first ever international start, 15, he was incredible. Like those hat-trick tries. He can never wear matching boots though again. He's just got to go with those ones that he's wearing tonight.
I know. And Andy, I was asking Andy Farrell about his performance after the game just there, and the first thing he said was, well, my first thoughts were, you better bloody play well if you're wearing different coloured boots. So I think only Mack Hansen.
Did you see the kiss at the end to John Fogarty? Oh my goodness, that was only Mack Hansen can get
after
away
the
with
watershed, was it? And look, to be fair, he pulled it off, and it wasn't just the lack of game time that he's obviously had due to the foot injury, but he's only played a handful of games at fullback for Connacht, and it hasn't always gone brilliantly. So like it was a big test in that regard. And look, obviously the 2 tries stand out early on, but that catch that he made above his head after about a minute was
incredible.
Exceptional.
Set the tone.
Yeah, and I think like Joe Schmidt would have looked at Mack Hansen as an area to potentially get after him. I think he would have known that. Can you imagine the satisfaction he must have taken Mack Hansen out of scoring a hat-trick against the country of his birth, who didn't deem him good enough to make the cut? It must have been just so sweet. And there was loads of good stuff. I think there's times when I watch Mack Hansen and I wonder how strong his kicking game is, and I know he played a lot at out half, but there's times where I'm like looking at him wondering it's not the strongest area of his game. But again, that was excellent tonight. He read the backfield really well. Look, I'd imagine it'll be a very different type of test next week, because I would surely he'll be starting again at 15, and what it does is it opens up a completely different picture for Ireland. We spoke about this yesterday. I mean, Hugo Keenan's probably watching on nervously enough. Jamie Osborne obviously out injured as well. And I think what the good thing is, because if they were all fit, I think Andy Farrell would find it very hard to drop Tommy O'Brien, because he's come in and played so well on the right wing. But this is the perfect scenario that Mack Hansen came in and fully justified, I suppose, the calculated gamble, if you want to call it that, by playing him at fullback. He was exceptional.
From the height we were at, just when Ireland were in their flow and in their shape, the white scrum cap operating just behind the front line, always an option, always looking for where the space was, telling Prendergast where he was. At times they could do a 2-sided attack because he has that ability to play 10. It just opened up Ireland's attack. They dovetailed really well, the two of them. They linked well together. They passed. There was one time that first attack after the high catch, he threw one lovely wide pass. He was popping up on Prendergast's shoulder. Obviously the 2 tries were walk-ins, but they were walk-ins partly because of the quality of the line that he took, and then the perceptiveness to score the third. Defensively, he was very strong. I know he dropped one cold in the second half and they took him off with cramp, but I mean, that's part of the fact that he's coming in cold, and he got a great reception. What a moment for him. And he'll be tested tested next week. But I think if Osborne was fit, frees him up to go into the midfield, because I'm increasingly unconvinced about Osborne as a fullback. I want to see him come in and compete for that, because competition is so important. We're seeing it now. How did Andrew Porter play after being left out today? He saw Paddy McCarthy, said, okay, I want that jersey back, and he came in and he won a couple of scrum penalties. And Keenan's going to come back stronger because of this. So and like Doris has come in at 7, done well. I know he finished the game at 8, but Josh van der Fleer is going to be like training the house down this week. Ringrose, I thought Robbie Henshaw, who's come in for a bit of criticism and people have been writing him off a little bit, and I wondered about his kind of top end pace at this stage. I thought tonight at 13 he was really excellent, and looks like he's that summer off because he missed the Lions has given him a chance to look after his body a bit, and he's getting that zip and that pace into him that was missing a little bit towards the back end of last season, and that's encouraging as well. But he knows he has to perform because he missed out in Chicago. So this is all really positive stuff for Ireland in the long term, and it's a night, I think, where they reminded everyone that they haven't gone away as a force.
And we have to, this is Andy Farrell kind of working his magic now. Now, listen, we've only got one game, as it were, so, but what, he is.
Yeah, and the competition for place is exactly what everyone wants to see. I think, I'd be curious to know kind of behind the scenes what he thought of the balance of the back row tonight.
What about it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still.
You were convinced yesterday anyway.
I'm just unsure if it's the best balance. I can completely understand the logic in doing it, but I thought it was quite telling that he changed it so early in the second half. Now, maybe Jack Honan was flagging in terms of fitness. He hasn't played a whole pile this season, but immediately Halen Doris made 2 huge carries, which didn't see him as prominently when he was in that 7 role. And look, he was a nuisance around the breakdown all night, but I still think pound for pound Caelan Doris is Ireland's best number 8, and I worry about maybe the balance of the back row. It worked absolutely fine tonight. I would fully expect him to go with it again next week against a big, powerful South African side. But going forward, I'm not that I'm not convinced, but I need to see more before I think that this is the perfect balance. I thought Ryan Baird, worth mentioning again, did he steal 3 of
Defensive
Australia's balls? Exceptional, absolutely exceptional. Like, I mean,
he's making that his own, isn't he?
The spring that he has, like something like, obviously, like he's getting great lifts from those around him, which he mentioned during the press conference earlier this week. But his spring is just incredible, and he caused havoc. I think Australia lost 6 of their own throws, which is kind of like a bit of what Ireland were sort of feeling over the last while. So I know you're big on the Darcy, but what did you think? How did you think it went tonight?
I don't think it was
I'm
brilliant.
not writing it off.
I don't think it was brilliant, but I like it as an option, and I think that I think Van der Fleer has had the run of that number 7 jersey for so long, and I'm not saying he's grown complacent, but sometimes you need to lose something to realise what you had before, and I do think that his form has been tailing off a little bit, and the Lions told the tale when he didn't get involved in it, or he wasn't selected in each of the games, and even the idea of bringing Josh, putting Josh in for Nick Timoney next week and bringing him in for the last 20 minutes to 30 minutes, like what a player to bring into a game against South Africa. Now he may well start if he's fit. It does sound like him and Ringrose will be fit for next week, so they come into the mix. But it'll be hard for them to win their places back. I think Baird is definitely worth touching on again. Even I'm pretty sure he caused the chaos that led to the penalty that Gibson Park tapped for the first try, chasing a high ball. Like, he's so athletic and he's so big and he's so awkward as well. It's a great combination, and he chases everything as if it's his last chase that he's going to come off, and sometimes it comes off for him, and like he's had mental issues in terms of switch offs in the last 2 games, but we didn't see that tonight. I think he's getting his hands on the ball, and I think it's quite telling that they're leaving him out there for 80 minutes and they're moving into the second row. Peter O'Mahony was in the stand. We saw him several times. He would have approved, because Baird has had to wait. He's got a lot of caps, but often they come, he starts one, he ends up on the bench for a couple of others, whereas now he's putting together back-to-back internationals, and it looks like it's starting to click with him, and he's been very impressive in this one. I think he's been one of Ireland's best players, but he's thrown in a couple of mental lapses that let him down.
Yeah,
not tonight though.
He's played 80 minutes in each of Ireland's games so far this month, and I think maybe not one of Leinster's games, but if not one, then he has played 80 minutes in every single one of his Leinster appearances this season as well. He has become an 80-minute man, and I think, you're right. I think partly some of those line-out issues that they've had have been because he admitted it himself earlier this week, that the one last week he just didn't hear the call, and you can't afford to tune out at all. And obviously he rectified that this week, and I think that was a big part of why the line out went so well.
He was also the passing forward in the front line quite a lot, and
we don't see that really.
No, it was a new, but it shows they're trusting him a little bit more. A few of them were a little bit high, but they largely stuck, and he's got good hands. He's a ball carrying threat, so he's got the option of going front door as well. He's winning a lot of the collisions that he's going into. I thought against Japan that was really important to Ireland, and it was important again tonight. So, people could criticise Andy Farrell for being a conservative coach. Well, that's a new player who's come in, not new, but he's a 25-year-old who's getting a run in the team now, having had to bide his time, and he's starting to shine, as Paddy McCarthy did tonight, as Prendergast did, as Tommy O'Brien has been doing, and that freshness, I think, even the positional switches of Hansen and Doris, it's just freshening up the team a little bit, and that the fact that players are not safe in their jerseys can only be good.
Yeah. What I really liked about the Paddy McCarthy, Andrew Porter punch was that so often in the past we see Porter play 70 minutes, and was it 55 maybe off the top of my head, when Paddy McCarthy maybe being closer to 50 minutes, that came off with an Andrew Porter who was, like you touched on, Rod, like mad to prove a point. So like having that 1-2 punch rather than like trying to drain every last second out of a prop. Like look at England's bench today, like the difference they made when they came on against the All Blacks. We need to see more of that from an Irish point of view.
Sam Prendergast, obviously we touched him earlier. Just overall his performance, he had some lovely moments, obviously some lovely crossfield kicks. The Tommy O'Brien try ruled out was unfortunate as well, but he had some, I suppose, defensive lapses as well. Really good game management, I thought, as well, with the drop goal that time. I thought he took that well, but overall,
I think in terms of the Ireland attack, I thought he ran it really, really well. I thought his passing was crisp, his kick selection was really good. He looks like his confidence is back. I thought his confidence had been taking a bit of a hit, even in Chicago. fairness, it was a really difficult scenario to come into the game when they're behind, but nothing went right for him, and you were wondering, God, is this winner going to pass him by? Because Crowley did seem like he'd taken command of it, but now I think the way the team looked with him in it, now the other players around them played better than they had done, so maybe it's harsh on Crowley to judge, but how much of that is Prendergast's ability to marshal the players around them, get them into the right positions, keep that attack shape through multiple phases. That's something that the coaches understand more than we do. But I thought in terms of his passing was excellent. The attack ran very well, and you're right, that decision to take the drop goal was exceptional. There was 3 one-on-one tackles that I can think of that he missed. Some of them, like a one-on-one with Lennox Katau close to the line. A 10 is going to sometimes struggle in that, but I do think he's got to do better than what he put in. I think Crowley does better. I think in that scenario, Crowley is the stronger player. But I think he's got Crowley in terms of the distance of his kicks. His line kicking is exceptional. I think Crowley probably has him on goal kicking in defence. And Crowley came on and did well when he came on. So it's not a... I'm really interested to see how they go with it this week. I think both of us were thinking coming into the game that it was going to revert back to Crowley next week, that he was basically number 1 for this window, but Prendergast would get an opportunity. Now, I mean, Andy Farrell talked more about Harry Byrne in the press conference than about either of them, which is a strange deflection tactic. I think Sam Prendergast is right in the mix next week, but the box would love the opportunity to run at him. Now, he did also nail James O'Connor and force a turnover early on, but that has to be more the rule rather than the exception. The tackling does need to improve. Andy Farrell described it on Friday when I asked him about it, or on Thursday, as a work in progress. It was a very short answer. He didn't really want to get drawn on it. He wouldn't give Prendergast a pass on the fact that he's a tall, lanky kind of player. He's demanding improvements, but if he can nail that area, like we saw tonight, that all the other parts of his game, when he's confident and when the team's going forward in front of him, which it might not necessarily be next week, look very, very good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he was helped massively by Gibson Park. I thought it was his best performance in quite a while. He was exceptional, but he had quick ball to play off, and that was down to the rucking of the likes of James Ryan, who probably won't get a lot of headlines, but I thought he had a quietly better game as well. It was such a pity that James O'Connor, because it felt like a big moment at the time when he forced the knock-on. It was such a pity that he didn't build on that defensively. Yeah, I know what you're saying about Lenny Katau, like to try, like he's a very powerful player, but it was just the sort of the body language attempt at it just wasn't really great, and like I'm still like very concerned that there was signs that it was getting better. I think particularly in the URC final, I think that was a standout where he made a couple of really good tackles, but they're just glaring misses, that one out wide as well, and I think the box would have a field day, to be honest. My sense was always that they were going to revert back to Jack Crowley, and as well as Sam Prendergast played, I would fully expect him to go back to Jack Crowley as well, because I thought he did well when he came off the bench too, and I just think you need to have a better defender there at 10, particularly against South Africa, who are going to have bigger men, and they're going to have the likes of Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu, who is just shooting the lights out at the moment. So a good headache to have. I thought Prendergast did some lovely things. Not just his shot selection in terms of his kicks, but it was the weight of those kicks. The weight of the kick for Tommy O'Brien for the disallowed try was sensational. Like such a difficult kick to pull off. And yeah, he did brilliantly in terms of running Ireland's attack, but that is only half of the battle. And if you're missing tackles like that, I think a head coach like Andy Farrell will probably be of a mind, I would imagine, to go back to the better defender, Jack Crowley, who will need to run Ireland's attack as well. That's my sense from this remove.
I'm not sure. I mean, like last year, it didn't stop him picking him for all the big games.
The improvements just are too slow, though, in terms of his defence.
I agree. I would go with Crowley next week, but just judging on what the way Farrell has picked the team in the past, and I do think they put a huge weight on the attack shape and how it looked, and the fact that it looked so good tonight, and that combination he had with Mack Hansen. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I think Crowley's done enough to keep the jersey, and then see how they both go in Europe, and let's get back together in the Six Nations and see who's ahead. But like the upside of this, everyone gets bogged down in the rivalry, is that the two of them are starting to show real form and real growth, and they're pushing each other, even though they seem to be good friends, and Prendergast spoke during the week about how well they get on. This battle, and if Byrne joins the party, the more the merrier. Like South Africa are showing, like Pollard played today, they Libok, Feinberg and Gomazulu will come back next week. Like they don't have a number one. They're just slotting lads in and out. Well, look, like Feinberg and Gomzulu is number one now, but they're comfortable enough putting Libbok in when they need him. So that's the place I guess Ireland want to get to, because it's not going to be a Johnny Sexton situation necessarily. But would Farrell go 2-2? They both get 2 starts each, and that's fair enough. I wouldn't surprise me just based on the way he's selected before. But again, I'm not sure. I think you would be worried about Prendergast 1-on-1 tackling if he's coming up against the Springboks. And also Ireland's goal line defence overall, not just Sam Prendergast. Like Australia's 3 tries were all from close range, and that's
that
a
doesn't
concern.
bode well. Yeah,
it is.
It's curious how Andy Farrell keeps mentioning Harry Byrne, isn't it? If he likes him so much,
Kieran Frawley, though, in fairness,
he should call him into the squad maybe if he likes him so much, and like referencing the Ireland 15 game that he played really well against Spain. Well, why don't you call him up to the squad? Because we know that Andy Farrell is a fan of Harry Byrne, but he's obviously starting from a much further way back than Crowley and Prendergast. But look, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out across the week. But if you're asking me now, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Crowley to start.
That's lighting the fire in the Prendergast, really, isn't it? Because like that's saying to Leo Cullen, pick who you want, because I rate the 2 of them, and Harry Byrne is right in the mix for that Leinster jersey. So Prendergast has a battle on 2 fronts, and that's a good thing again, because like maybe the message will be, if you don't get your tackling right, Harry Byrne's going to take your slot, and then you're fighting a battle to get into the Ireland squad, or the 23. So, but again, competition like that's something that that settled team that Ireland have had for so long, I think has become a weakness in the last year. And I think I'm just like excited by the fact that he's changing it, and the changes are working. So Stuart McCluskey comes in. He plays well, so Bundy Aki has to play well off the bench.
Even the way Bundy came on tonight, he was ready to go. Do we have an update on Stuart, actually?
I asked Andy Farrell there, and I think, it was a recurrence of the groin injury that he picked up in Soldier Field, which is so disappointing, because I thought he was excellent again, and it was a really big show of faith in Andy Farrell, because obviously Henshaw and Bundy Aki were both fit. I know Gary Ringrose was ruled out, but he's been brilliant every time he's stepped in, and it feels like there was sort of a bit of a sea change there in terms of the makeup of what Andy Farrell was looking for from the 12, because I know Bundy Aki came on early, didn't think he had his best game, certainly nothing like the impact that he made in Cardiff off the bench, but just so unfortunate for Stuart McCluskey. He kind of sums up his Ireland career, doesn't it, really, in many ways, that he waits so long for his opportunity, and he gets it off the back of his hard work and his good form, despite the fact that Bundy Aki is fit. And now it looks like he's probably going to be facing a little while out of the game anyway, because it sounded like he worked his ass off to try and get back for the game this week. But Andy Farrell said it there that, it's all well and good kind of rehabbing well in training, but the test match intensity really caught him out in terms of the injury not being fully healed. So that's a blow for Ulster as well. Obviously, they've got some big games coming up over the next while, but just really gutting for Stuart McCluskey, because he was playing brilliantly again.
But it's all set up nicely now, isn't it? Obviously, for our next weekend. South Africa, again, played and won with 14 men. They were down to 13, actually, at one stage as well today. They beat Italy, but these weeks, they're always pretty salty, aren't they? Ireland, South Africa.
Look, there's so much familiarity between the two camps, with the fact that Rassie Erasmus once coached Munster, and he has Felix Jones, Jerry Flannery, and isn't Paddy O'Sullivan, the analyst behind the scenes as well. You've got Alan Walters, who used to work in the Springbok setup in the Irish team. They've played again. John Klein was probably going to be in the 23. RG Snyman is going to be involved. There is so much kind of Dwayne Vermeulen played in Ulster. Like there's so much, there's so many different connections between the two setups, and it's been a bona fide rivalry. And it's the one thing Rassie Erasmus has not done in his time as a Springbok coach, is to win in Dublin. So Ireland beat them in Durban the last time they played each other. That stung. Like I've rarely seen a coach as disconsolate after a game as I saw Rassie Erasmus in Durban that night. He was barely able to get a word out, which is not like him. The World Cup defeat, we know what that did to them. If you watch the Chasing the Sun documentaries, like the response to that defeat, really, that was ground zero for their assault on the actual World Cup crown. But at the times that they've met before, it was a meeting of equals. The perception, and I would have gone along with that going into this week, certainly, is that South Africa have moved beyond Ireland. Ireland showed tonight that they're still a very, very good team, right at in that mix just beneath the South Africans. But the way South Africa blew France away last weekend with 14 men, never mind what their kind of much changed team did to Italy, Ireland are going to have to find 2023 levels to try and down the South African team, even if they're missing Mostert and Lou Diager, who will probably both be suspended after the red cards. And that's the challenge, and like how rare is it for Ireland to go into a game at home where everyone's writing them off? No one thinks they're going to win this game, and they'll buy into that. I think they'll enjoy that, and the fact that the pressure's off for once, and everyone's expecting a South Africa win. So it's going to be a fun week.
Yeah, I don't just think it's I know what you mean, but I don't think it's a perception. I think South Africa are comfortably the best team in the world, and they've opened a gap, I think, between everyone else.
I don't think Andy Farrell will buy into that. I think Andy Farrell will be telling his team that this is your chance to show that you are still in this company. They haven't shown it since the World Cup.
Show me your World Cup medals, I think.
No, I know, but the last time they played, Ireland beat them, so he's going to be trying to lean. I'm with you. Like, I think South Africa have moved beyond Ireland. And a win over Australia is not going to convince me that they haven't. But we know what Farrell will be telling them. And in fairness, the evidence that he has is the win here, the win in Paris, and the win in Durban. Yes, South Africa went on and won the World Cup, and they've done it twice, and they are a better team overall. But Ireland have been a match for them, and I guess the challenge is to go to that level again.
Yeah, and the other big difference is that this is not a team flagging at the end of a season, which were the big fears about Australia. And while they huffed and puffed and they asked plenty of questions of Ireland, you could see, particularly at the end, I know they got that consolation, but there was a lot of players out on their feet, and I'd say they are very much looking forward to the end of the season. This is not the case with a South African team who were in season, bang in form. I mean, what they've done over the last 2 weeks, like you said, Sinead, playing with 14 men, both times you wouldn't have realised that they were playing with a man.
It's just their team spirit, I think, is
team spirit.
Really
it's just like
stands out as well.
Rassie is obviously able to plug into that mentality, and it's like what they're doing with their bench in terms of Andre Esterhuizen playing in the back row, who looks like a world-class back row after being a world-class 12, and a bit like Stuart McCloskey had to really bide his time for a long time, and he's been exceptional as well. Like, they didn't name was it a prop on the bench today? They had a hooker
two props, 2 second rows, 2 utility players,
and they had Van Staden covering hooker as well. And like, these are really ballsy, brave kind of things, and Rassie is at the forefront of all this innovation that we're seeing more and more coaches copy. But what they've done, I know it was a changed team today against Italy, but like you said, Rod, the performance against France in that second half was up there, I think, with their 23 levels in terms of the World Cup win. And I think, I don't think anyone certainly here is getting ahead of ourselves in terms of what Ireland did tonight, like I said, against an Australian team who were looking for the beach, because this is a very different challenge that's coming next week.
I think they're better now. I think they've gone to a new level.
South Africa,
they're better than they were in 2023.
Yeah.
Maybe they're peaking too early. You never know. Maybe they're getting their timing wrong. But it does look like they've the best of what they had in 23, and they've layered on new players, and they've an ability to beat you. I mean, they went to Old Testament with 14 men in Paris, and they can do that. They can put the ball in the corner, and that's where the goal line defence stuff is a worry. Like, they're the best team. They're the best scrum in the world. They're the best line out in the world. They're the best aerial team in the world. So it's like they're the best defence in the world. So where do you? And their attack is pretty sharp as well. So where do you find your ins? You look at how Ireland beat Australia tonight. They went after Australia's weaknesses, and they played the conditions really well. And obviously that we don't know what the weather is going to bring. And it's going to be pretty cold next week, but. Where do Ireland get their ins? Like, you're not going to have a Max Jorgensen having a stinker. You're probably going to have, World Cup winner in each position, or someone who's, battled the World Cup winner out of that position starting. So it's just such an amazing challenge, and that's why it's going to be such a great week. Yeah,
Tony Brown has come in as attack coach, and you're right, Rog. They've kept everything that they're good at, and now they have this brilliant attack, which is led by Sasha Feinberg in Ngomazulu. And I thought his try last weekend against France perfectly summed up this perfect culmination between the new and the old. I think they played off a line. I think it was 3 phases over to the left, swung back to the right. So did all the hard stuff, the unglamorous stuff in terms of setting it up, and then you just put Sasha and Feinberg in Ngomazulu, who was playing at 15 at the time because they brought on Manny Lebok, and having those dual playmakers, a bit like we were talking tonight with Mack Hansen coming for 15, was just an exceptional try, again with 14 men, and summed up what they're able to do by playing this route one approach, but also having the Stardust on the outside as well. So I agree with you. I think they're a better team, which is pretty mad to say considering they've won the last 2 World Cups. But I think Ireland will absolutely relish the challenge, because they take a lot of confidence, I think, from what they did tonight.
Okay, anything else? We're just after midnight here.
No, time for bed.
Time for bed. Yeah, okay. Well, Rory and Cian, thanks a million for that. Should be a cracking week. We'll be here next weekend after that game. Thanks for listening.